I am currently in the August House of the Parliament. I'm going to interview one of the more popular opposition lawmaker, that is YB Khairy Jamaluddin. He has quite interestingly not followed his party in the first day of session when he sat in and the rest of his colleagues actually walked out in terms of protesting against the appointment of the speaker. I will ask him a series of questions, not just including how the first day went down, but of course his views on the GST and why he believes that the GST should remain instead of the introduction of the SST. Here's my interview with him. There is an argument that was made by the Minister of Youth and Sports to push down the voting age from 21 to 18. And for the longest of time, we haven't heard you say any comments regarding this. Any reason why you're refraining from commenting on such issues?
Well, ideally, of course, the voting age should be reduced to 18. I mean, the argument is that if you can get a driving license at 17, then you should be able to vote at 18. But I would also argue that voting is a right, but it's also a right that is not easily bestowed on citizens. So we give our citizens the right to vote, of course, but in lowering the age of voting, we have to be sure first that there is enough civic consciousness and education amongst young Malaysians, those aged 18 to 21, that they are able to make informed decisions about the future of the country. I have great faith in our young people. I have great faith that some of them, many of them even, are aware of what's happening, aware of current affairs, aware of the history and the politics of our country. But there is a concern that until and unless they are fully exposed to civics, government, history, and truly understand these things, they may not be able to make that informed decision. So, in principle, I am for lowering the age to 18, but that must be
I guess accompanied with these.
Accompanied, yes, that must be accompanied by certain measures to ensure that we give them enough education and exposure to understand issues and to understand that that right to vote is actually a very heavy, comes with a heavy responsibility, which includes being informed.
The recent direction by your party president, Datuk Sri Zahid Hamidi, and announcing that UMNO members can now join the party at age 16, is this a reflection that UMNO is trying to appeal to the youth to embrace UMNO, perhaps not just in terms of youth membership, but a new paradigm in shifting the focus of what UMNO is today into what UMNO has to be to become?
You know, obviously we're trying to appeal to this younger group of Malaysians who will eventually become voters in a few years. But then again, it comes back to the same concerns that I have in reducing the voting age. It's one thing reducing the age of membership to 16 from 18 currently in UMNO, but whether or not there are enough political education programs in place so that these members are not, they don't just end up becoming card-carrying members, but more importantly, they are exposed to, first of all, UMNO's history, ideology. They have the right worldview as far as where to take UMNO after this, and they have a profound understanding of the country's politics and economics. That's more important than numbers. I think the lesson that we've learned from the last elections, the key lesson is that it's about quality, not just quantity in terms of UMNO's membership.
There are already allegations by the current government that they are reneging on some of the campaign election promises. A lot of urban voters particularly are now saying that this is the realities of politics. It takes one thing to win an election, it does another in terms of governing. Do you think that the government currently is on the right path? And where do you think are the areas that you can pounce on, if I may use the word, as an opposition lawmaker?
Well, obviously there are certain promises that they're finding very difficult to keep. They've broken smaller promises, election of speakers, political appointees and GLCs. There are bigger 100-day promises which they are struggling to keep. For instance, the promise that PTPTN borrowers will only have to start paying once they get 4,000 ringgit salary monthly. And the one promise that I said they should not keep is abolishing the GST. I'm quite in favor of, not quite, I'm very much in favor of keeping the GST at a lower rate to bring in the same revenue as SST, include more items in the exclusionary list to make it same level of burden to the consumer as SST. So I think, you know, the Prime Minister himself has said that the manifesto is not a Bible and that they shouldn't be bound to the manifesto. So in that spirit, I think we can understand if some promises like the GST, since it makes economic sense to not keep those, but others they have to explain why did they make the promise in the first place. PTPTN, for instance, has huge implications, financial implications to the government. So they will have to explain why they made that promise in the first place. I don't mind them eventually breaking it, but they must admit that they made these promises based on populist reasons, which were irresponsible in the first place.
All right, I'd like to stick on the issue of GST. You are one of the hardliners in terms of those propagating to keep the GST and not reintroduce the SST back into the country. Do you think that this is a mere academic exercise at the end of the day because the government will introduce SST anyway?
Well, I mean, with the majority in the Dewan Rakyat, Pakatan Harapan can certainly bulldoze the GST bill. It has to go to the Senate, in which we have a majority. So they have to make a very convincing argument why they want to abolish the GST and reinstate the SST. So far, the arguments have not been good enough as far as I'm concerned. The Minister of Finance, in an exchange that I had with him 2 days ago, admitted that the ultimate reason why they want to do this is to honor a campaign promise. I said GST is better. He admitted GST is a more transparent, efficient system. I said you can set it at a lower rate to make it revenue neutral to your SST. You can include more items from the CPI basket of goods into the exclusion list, and the effect on the consumer will be mitigated the same as SST. He said he understands all of that, but because it's a campaign promise, he needs to go ahead with that. So that's an example of how populist promises trumps over sound economic policies and programs. And for me, that's sad because I think a lot of comments that I've read on social media have said that you know, we didn't vote Pakatan in because of GST. We voted them in for other reasons, 1MDB, Prime Minister Najib, etc. So they are willing to accept GST, but perhaps at a low rate.
And of course, there are some other issues surrounding your campaign or the things that you're championing inside the Dewan Rakyat. Most recently is the abolishment of the CEP. You're saying that they are unelected, unrepresentative. Do you think that things like this, not just the CEP, I'm using this as an example, but things like this, do you think that this will be a hallmark under this administration?
Well, you know, they promised that the CEP will be disbanded after 100 days, so we'll wait to see whether that promise will be honoured. But, you know, within the 100 days, the CEP has gone beyond its stated terms of reference. You know, they've pressured top judges, the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeal into resigning. They've pressured the former Bank Negara Governor into resigning. They were clearly not playing just an advisory role, but they were clearly playing a role that was far beyond that. Concentration of power post-CEP into the PM's office is something that I'm concerned about. For instance, the announcement of the new Khazanah board was done by the Prime Minister's office, not by the Ministry of Finance. It should have been done by the Ministry of Finance because Khazanah is almost entirely owned by the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. So things like these suggest that, you know, once even the CEP is removed, there's still going to be a concentration of power in the Prime Minister's office, which is something they promised that they wouldn't do, which was something they criticized us before. So this whole issue of concentration of power and accountability of the CEP in the first place is of concern. But, you know, obviously we're monitoring it, and it's something that we have to be continuously vigilant against.
There are many sensible, moderate Malays, geographically inconclusive because they are everywhere in this country, and they are looking at you and they're looking at the new UMNO. Do you think you have what it takes in terms of reimagining UMNO into what you believe should be instead of what it is now?
Well, I had some ideas for UMNO when I contested for the presidency, leadership of the party. I was unsuccessful, and we have to accept and respect the result of the party leadership contest. I hope that the current leader, Datuk Seri Zahid, can incorporate some of my ideas into the reforms that he plans to bring into UMNO. There will be another leadership, another party election in 3 years, and I think we'll have to see at that point in time whether or not we make another change, or whether or not I or anybody else offers ourselves for the leadership before we head into the next election.
Before that, sorry, this is an addendum to my final question. Why did you reject the maneuvers that Datuk Zaid Hamidi has given you in terms of being a setiausaha agong and stuff
I want to remain unencumbered in the party so that I can speak a bit more freely. Had I taken a senior post in the party, that would have curtailed my ability to be an alternative conscience for the party. Someone who supports the leadership in the party, but voices out when he needs to. But I played my role diligently in Parliament, and if there's any role in Parliament that they would like me to play additionally to what I have been doing as a normal MP, I'm happy to do that. But as far as the party is concerned, I'd rather sit out for now.
And would we expect, your coalition to form a shadow cabinet?
It's something that we've already discussed. In fact, a preliminary list has gone out already, so we've all been trying to play our roles as per that list.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm really excited about the shadow cabinet, though.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for spending time. Okay, great. That was my conversation with YB Khairy Jamaluddin. If you want to watch more of these interviews, just head on to awanireview.com and search for the interviews there. I'm Ibrahim Sani. Thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.